Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. So, no rational arguments, so I guess we'll just have to do some irrational ones. Anyway, so Steven's made 3 more videos, who knows what the fuck, but whatever. And again, surely not ever will he deal with the essential arguments, which are he has no corroborating evidence for his theory. He can show no Professor Lewin experiment demonstrating it or anyone else's experiment. So he has no experimental evidence. He hasn't in any way countered the history of the kinetic energy theory, which is abysmal in terms of the evidence provided to defend the argument. He hasn't in any way addressed the paradox problem of these things really can't, creating perpetual motion and free energy are not really viable theories, considering there's no evidence for any of that, and that if your theory produces such an outcome, you should be able to account for it, and you've accounted for nothing. And let's see, you can go just on and on, right? So there's 3 or 4 good ones. So we'll read some of this crap. Gary thinks he's a physics genius who outshines Einstein. I'm saying Einstein shouldn't really shine all that much. Okay, it's good that he did the photoelectric effect, and he didn't really do it, right? I mean, it's another German scientist did all the experiments, and he just put the information together, but was good work. Good work on the Brownian motion, proving the existence of atoms. Yeah, great. But the rest of it's dicey. It's crapola, frankly. And so, outshining a bullshit artist in a sense. And Einstein was. I mean, at some points I've been sympathetic that it wasn't all his fault. But if you really look at how he promoted the Eddington experiment as being a validation of his theory, it is pretty shabby. Anyway, yet every claim he makes is provably wrong. So again, he won't touch the 3 videos I'm saying go ahead and prove them wrong. And he doesn't touch any of the arguments made in any of these videos. So he doesn't care there's a paradox. He doesn't care his theory isn't consistent with the overt statements of every professor I've ever heard. And then he has the gall to say somebody else is in denial. So he's overtly refuting what the professors all say, and yet he doesn't have any obligation to explain how that makes any sense. None whatsoever. Okay. And his answers to that is denial. Yes, I deny things until I'm provided convincing evidence. You say you've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that there's a free momentum is built into the dynamics of the universe, and all I have to do is, knock small things into big things. It's theoretically, take the energy created by small things and replace them with larger things, and I will just keep creating free energy. I don't think that works. So yes, I'm in denial until you explain how it's not paradoxical. I've tested his claim, so we know that his tests are flawed. That there's reason to be suspect, okay? The fact that he used gravity to push something, that was a mistake. He won't concede it. He'll just keep saying he's tested the claim and it's wrong. His pawns moving up and down thing, okay? Flawed because the weights were too light. All right, so they didn't apply a constant force. So one side got a free ride because he gave it too much initial velocity. And so it didn't have to fight gravity. It didn't have to pull the rest of the distance. Whatever. But whatever. Play your game here, and it is wrong. He puts in capital 100% wrong. So he's saying he's proved it in spite of the fact that the experiment isn't consistent with what's taught in physics lectures, nor does he have any other corroborating experiment he can point to. And this is how he thinks. This is the kind of discipline people should apply when doing science. They should be this undisciplined. This incapable of saying, well, let's wait till we confirm. He's just a Ken Wheeler. I mean, he's literally he's doing the same thing. He puts a magnet next to a crayfish and then say, crayfish like magnets. Yeah, sure they do. but it won't deter him from thinking he is Einstein. So again, just these references again. If I'm right, then I'm better than Einstein. Just a fact. If I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'd still argue it was a damn good effort because, frankly, the theory works, and that's very unusual for counter theories. Most people's counter theories are crazily flawed, overtly and obviously flawed. Yet you can't provide any evidence besides your own experiments to demonstrate me wrong. You can't show it in an experiment. You can't show me, okay, your wave theory in action. Okay, you can't show me the radar crashing into the radar and turning into nothing. Photon plus photon equals nothing. Can't show any of that. All right, the intent here is to persuade Gary and others to stop making false pseudoscientific claims. So again, there he's making the pseudoscientific claims. My channel is called DraftScience, and yes, it has a unification theory built into it, and it's premised on. And there are certain principles, you could call them, that are completely consistent with regular physics in the sense of, yes, conservation of momentum. It's a thing. It's a real thing. The movement in the universe, there's only so much of it, and you can cut it into different size pieces in terms of mass versus velocity, but there's only so much mass and only so much velocity, and that's it. Okay, for which, and so that's hardly a pseudo-scientific claim. Anyway, for which they make no attempt to show supporting experimental evidence. Such an ironic statement. I mean, I guess I should put this in capitals on my website. Okay, so where's your supporting evidence? Your experiment is alone in the universe right now. It's all by itself. There's nothing else to say, oh, here's another experiment that looks just like it. All the other experiments don't look just like it. You drop the weight on the train car, it doesn't catch fire. It doesn't lose momentum. It doesn't do any of these stupid things. So, you know, yours is the horseshit theory right at the moment in the sense that the volume of evidence is not supporting your theory. So just amazing horseshit. So there's one comment. I figure it's worth reading because it at least tells you what the video might be about. You're right on the mark, says Cyrus Thornton, who we don't know who the fuck he is. Has a little green, red, and blue icon indicating some indication of liking photons, maybe. Let's see. Just has playlists. He doesn't have any content of his own, so he likes math, and that's about all you can say. Yeah, he likes math. Yes, no videos. Okay, so it doesn't mean much to me so far. It's almost hilarious that his crap was the best delusion he could come up with. So yeah, my best delusion is to play Professor Lewin videos and to show that his video says a certain thing. The experiment says a certain thing. Now I'm still stuck with the last experiment that does, in my opinion, create a paradox. Now, you haven't addressed that video. No one's addressed it. I mean, it does seem that if you're transferring 3/4 of your velocity to something that weighs twice as much, that you've just created free energy. But do you have an explanation? No. Or do you care? No. So it's just that funny. Your spring demonstration is another verification of Hooke's law. Hooke's law, this is the most unremarkable law in the history of science. It's the law that basically just says, you know, as I showed, I played Professor Lewin putting 1 kilogram on a spring. Then he puts 2 kilograms on a spring. And then he puts 3 kilograms on a spring. And it moves the same exact distance with the amount of weight you put on. Now, is that a really important law? Does that tell us anything? Is that something you even would call a law? It's so simple. It's so simple an observation. No, I'd say it's pretty pathetic to call that a law. It's pretty simple. F equals K times X. So it's just saying that proportional to the force. The distance the spring moves is proportional to the force applied. Now, what about that is at all something to say, oh, that should be a law, and blah, 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 and we'll call it after this guy. I mean, it's like saying you put a 50-pound person on a scale and he weighs 50 pounds, and you put a 100-pound person on a scale and he weighs 100 pounds. It goes to 100 pounds. Is that some sort of miraculous observation? I don't think so. All right, where K is the spring constant. Again, it's sort of an irrelevant, as most constants, you know, in the sense of the principle is that the spring always moves proportionally. So, you know, you put, 10 pounds on it, goes that much, well then 20 pounds is going to go twice that much. Okay, and the variable is the compression and release of the spring. Okay, his load of crap saying that the spring constant and compression release change by position. So complete lie. I mean, just an absolute pile of shit. I have not said that. So it's just absolute crap. Clearly it changes by position in the sense if you compress the spring more, you have more stored energy. But I have said nothing to indicate I think there's variable outcomes. Your theory has the variable outcome. You're saying that the same spring compression can create different momentums. Now, why don't you explain how that's possible? I compress the spring with a 100-pound person, and you're saying I don't have to, it's not 100 pounds. I can make it only 75 pounds. Or I can make it 125 pounds. Somehow 125 pounds is the same as 100 pounds, and 75 pounds is the same as 100 pounds. You're saying that. When the spring is attached to a car or a wall, I speculated clearly that there has to be an explanation. The Professor Lewin experiment clearly points out that he's not, he was using elastic objects that are already hard steel, already could be called elastic. And he made them more elastic by putting springs on them. Now, if you don't think that's the part that's probably creating the paradox, I put it on you. Do the experiment without the springs. Does it work? Does the same thing happen? Or the constant and compression release change on direction of movement. The argument is the spring itself has a mass, and when that mass has velocity, that's going to be an issue in how the spring stores energy. That's my argument. That you change what can be stored by the spring by changing its motion. Of course, the physics are not dependent on these bull BS statements. Now, you can make your relativity arguments, but I'm arguing that maybe your relativity argument can be shown to be bullshit through this very type of experiment. If we can move springs fast enough, But it seems clear to me that you have to provide an explanation. I'm just saying, unless you're going to say, yes, you believe in free momentum, you can just, you can create mechanisms where you can create more momentum. I can drop a light thing on a spring, replace it with a heavy thing, and release the spring, and I create more momentum. You're saying that's possible. Explain. All right, the physics is that force of the spring release is not altered by position or direction. So again, you're saying that, but you don't really have any evidence showing it, do you? I mean, you certainly haven't proven that the movement of a spring doesn't guarantee that the spring is storing energy related to that movement. But only when the spring is stretched beyond its capacity to snap back to its original state. So frankly, I don't think I played Professor Lewin actually taking the spring and stretching it, but yes, who doesn't know that? If you break the spring, it don't work the same no more. Duh. And I certainly have talked about springs have working tolerances. So this is, again, an argument that has specifically been made. So Cyrus, if you have any integrity, deal with the actual argument made. I pointed out in a video very clearly that there's a segment of Professor Lewin where he actually is talking about the stiffness of springs. And the fact is that another constant to be aware of is the fact that the springs, as they get stiffer, get faster. They can create faster velocities. Stiffer springs can impose higher velocities than weak springs. Weak springs, like a slinky, can't push anything at a high velocity. So no longer how big you make the slinky, you're not going to get enough velocity out of the slinky to ever project light objects fast. So it can't do it. It can't deliver the energy to the object. It ends up delivering it to, stays inside the spring, and the spring oscillates. If the spring is oscillating, it's sort of an indication that the spring didn't give back all of its energy. You could sort of understand that, right? I mean, if a spring's oscillating, it sort of means it just didn't, it didn't give it all back. Anyway, in your demonstration, the spring worked perfectly. So how do you know that? I guess it's in this video. We'll see. Thus, you prove your point on kinetic energy as well as Hooke's law. So again, Hooke's law isn't in debate here. So in no way has any assertion been made that springs don't compress proportional to the energy that hits them, the momentum, or in your case, the kinetic energy. I mean, this is an argument about the validity of one or the other of these things. It's going to come down to, it has to come down to, one is right and one is wrong. I would say that overtly we know momentum works in space. Momentum lands you on the moon. Kinetic energy doesn't. Momentum explains the gun. Kinetic energy doesn't, because kinetic energy overtly violates Newton's third law. So there's lots of arguments that can be made. I guess they have to be made in a very explicit order, but you pay no attention to any of them. You do not respond to what's been said in this very video. Stephen Bro, coward. You, coward. Okay, the thought experiment questions still haven't been dealt with anything called reason. Can you find one of the answers to those paradox questions that you sit there and say, yes, that answers the question? Do you have any of that? No. You're just a shit talker. All right, let's see. So, oh, he's got this, please pay my $50. The only charity I would give the money to is a charity that wishes to send trolls to Mars. And by Mars, I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be, you can fake the launch of the rocket. Okay, just fake it. Just say you sent them to Mars. I mean, I'm not going to, if I gave the money to a charity, it'd be a charity that would have something to do with annihilating liars like you from us having to endure you. You piece of scum. All right. Thank you, Cyrus. Okay, he bragged that he only had to think for a few hours before noticing the spring was attached to the trolley, not the wall. So it's good that you replay. If you redid the experiment, but he didn't change the spring, right? That would be kind of funny, right? Because I did bring up the two subjects. And I didn't bring them up as any kind of, I'm certain that's the thing that did it. I brought them up as possible explanations, just as I brought up the fact that I noticed, well, wait, he's using gravity to push something. Gravity's only 9.8 meters per second, blah, 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 blah. I showed my reasoning process. Now, I overtly said it would provide some possibility of explaining why the Professor Lewin experiment works. You haven't opined at all. Again, I showed you an experiment. Professor Lewin creates more momentum in an object. Do you have any analysis, any theoretical reasoning for why that makes sense to you? Crickets. All right, as if it made any difference. It didn't. As shown in the video I just uploaded, which I have titled, Gary, please pay $50 to charity. So it's not even in this video? Oh, how strange. So again, this argument that I owe any money, these are all public videos. There was no video where I said I will pay Stephen Bro anything ever. I never made any agreement to pay an asshole. What I asked for was real good evidence. So what I asked for is you can give me a link to the experiment. I mean, the kinetic energy experiment, where they collect the kinetic energy, or where Professor Lewin or some qualified scientist does these experiments. Then I would pay the person who provided the link. But I would certainly pay them at my discretion. I have no obligation to pay for any link by any description. And I certainly don't have any obligation to pay some fucking troll to sit there and lie. I mean, what a completely insane person this is. I mean, this is slander. I don't owe you any money. I never agreed to pay you any money. You saying I do owe you money is a lie. A slanderous fucking lie. You have no contract, you have no statement by me in any way indicating I would pay for your crap troll videos. You fucking lunatic. Okay, anyway. But because he is so desperate for excuses, so again, you're the one that's running from your obligation as a prover of truth, is to show you have integrity. Okay, you can't just sit there and keep saying this crap. I didn't show you how I released the spring. I didn't show you what the spring was. I didn't show you what the constant of the spring was. I didn't show you a damn thing about it. I'll just tell you what the facts are. No, I'm not buying it. Especially with an experiment that completely refutes all of current physics. So current physics is completely refuted by this experiment. None of these assholes. I mean, Cyrus, do you concede the point that Professor Lewin doesn't believe what Steve Bro believes? Do you understand that? Will you respond to that fact? Will you show me how Professor Lewin's words regarding kinetic energy being conserved, can it all be applied to what Stephen Bro is saying? Okay, anyway. Sound vaguely credible to his dopey supporters. So more of this crap that this has something to do with supporters. This has absolutely nothing to do with supporters. It has absolutely nothing to do with, convincing people for any dopey reasons. It has to do with the fact that I am completely unconvinced. You're saying it's a fact. I'm saying there are facts that are in direct conflict with your fact. And you're paying no attention to that actual argument. Okay. Then bingo, he feels he has done his job. So where has that ever been an indication on this channel ever? Oh, that's right, nowhere. Absolutely no evidence. I give a fucking flying fuck with the goddamn, what do they call the crowd? The fleas in the audience. No, I don't care. Well, that's fine if his job is simply coming up with pathetic excuses. So again, more arguments about the physics. And the physics is there has to be a mechanical process, and you don't want to pay any attention to that. And everybody knows that if they add a little funny variable to something, the magician's little table has a mirror in the front, or so that detail probably has something to do with the trick. So there's a trick. Okay, why are the LEDs all the way around the outside of the ferrocell? Why don't you just use the light bulb? That only have to be tested by other people, never him. So again, this whole idea that physics should be done, on living room tables, is again, do you have any counter argument to my argument that that's not going to produce good physics? That's exactly how you do the Ken Wheeler thing. You do an amateur, shoddy, shitty experiment. Okay, you don't do it well. You don't, in any way document anything. That's the way physics should be done. No, that's the way flat earth science is done. Bozo. Brozo. But he makes out his job is the exact opposite. So again, you're the one doing the Ken Wheeler thing. If Ken Wheeler said what Gary says, Gary would laugh his head off. And why would I? So it's a completely nonsensical statement. If Ken Wheeler was saying what I was saying, then I'd say Ken Wheeler's got it right. Too silly. Gary must go to bed knowing he's done nothing but talk shit all day. No, I go to bed every night pondering some of these still yet unanswered questions. But I feel quite confident, that the mechanical universe is not virtual photons. And, it's not bent space and all of that crap. I wonder how he feels to be that dense. Yeah, well, you can wonder, but I think you're way past it, fuckhead. Anyway, so apparently his experiment isn't in this video. I probably should just zoom through it because what's the fuck? There won't be any argument here, right? Well, we'll just see how it begins and then we'll decide whether I'm going to bother you to listen. Let's see if he has any point to make at all.
It's a humongous lie. It's the exact opposite of a fact.
And it does for a perfectly rational reason.
No, it doesn't happen for any.
So this whole quote mining thing is just so stupid. Okay, so why don't you get to the premise you're making a counter argument to? What is this shit of a video again? Every one of your videos is just stupid, petty shit. It has nothing to do with making an argument. I mean, I've argued Christians with more civility than you're using here, and they're mass murderers, essentially.
Reason it doesn't happen, full stop. You're completely wrong. It's not a fact, idiot.
This side's moving very slowly.
Idiot.
This side's moving very fast.
So what is this? This is the way you think this is great argument style for engaging another person in the first place? That they would have some obligation to tolerate this crap? To sit there and make a counter argument to you? You're so special? So you can't play the videos I ask you to play, and all you can do is cut little clips out and then repeat them. Isn't it, you know, again, just, and also doing Photoshop. You just don't give a fuck about this subject at all. And it's really disgusting that anybody pays any attention to you.
Idiot.
Obviously, this side is escaping the energy.
Idiot.
Okay, I mean, what's the point of playing the video, right? Okay, so I won't play the video. All right, well, I'll see if there's any argument in the video, and then I'll play it, and I'll be back if there's some point he's making somewhere besides this fucking juvenile nonsense. What a stupid little putz. Again, my fault. My bad for making this person relevant to any conversation, because you can't have a conversation. Too stupid. Alright, I guess we can just do this little bit. So again, what happened? Anyways, okay, so, it's just this constant, just take a tiny portion of my argument in his argument, repeat it over and over again. I mean, this is such a stupid, again, it's just juvenile behavior. But anyway, I will just play this little bit.
At minimum, and deceptive at the worst.
They're just reasonable experiments that have proven over and over again are correct.
Okay, so he says he's proven over and over again they're correct. So I've proven over and over again that they're flawed, and you won't acknowledge that. So again, do you think you're going to get variable velocities by using a gravity mechanism to push objects? No, not realistic. Do you think that if you're going to try to measure how much force something's creating, that if you put light things on, that it isn't a huge advantage to high velocity objects that go in? Of course it is. Anyway, I mean, they're real flaws. You want to pretend they're not real flaws in your experiments? No, they're real flaws.
Just a weasel like you can't face the facts because that makes you look a prick. That just proves that you're a prick.
Whatever. So all this proof. You're falling way below the standard of a proof. All right. So anyway, we'll pause again. Just do through some more horse shit, I suppose. Nah. Well, this bit's actually interesting. He's making some perspective point, like somehow I should give up because he's proven something so profoundly that it can't possibly be disputed. Again, so I have no corroborating evidence. I have no physics teacher, lecturer, professor proving any of this stuff, and no references, no accounting for the history, no accounting for how Newton was wrong, none of it. And I should give up because I've been overwhelmed by all this magnitude of reasoned argument. You haven't dealt with any of the thought experiments, and you haven't dealt with the fact that your theory creates a free energy paradox. You've provided no answers whatsoever, and yet he does this horse shit.
You're not going to face the reality of what's being shown to you, and you're not going to spend any money doing the experiment yourself. You're not going to press aero so breeze or anybody else to do the experiment for you. He's just going to, I don't think he's going to do it. I hope he does. But if he doesn't, is it he? It could be she, I don't know. But if he or she does actually do the experiment, fantastic, you know what I mean? And if he gets to...
I think it's clear he doesn't want any part of this horse shit. Okay, so this isn't what he wants to do, is be part of this kind of nonsense. But yeah, I don't know anything about him. I don't know anything about beyond the public comments, and that's fine with me. But yeah, he hasn't publicly commented on my video, so I don't know if he's interested still or not. So yes, if he's not going to do it, I will send out some more. I mean, I sent out a dozen emails, to channels on YouTube that do physics experiments, and I haven't gotten any replies. That's the way it goes. But the fact is, it really should be done by somebody who has the equipment to do it well, frankly. Me wasting time trying to set up some, Rube Goldberg piece of crap experiment isn't going to prove anything, to you people especially, and it won't be a great scientific demonstration. So it might make me more confident, but what use is that? I'm already confident enough.
Different results. Well, we'll look at why. That's what you need to be doing. You shouldn't be. I don't think, as long as he does it professionally, you shouldn't get different results. There's no earthly reason why you should.
Okay, no reason why doing it professionally matters. That's what he just said. Why should you get different results? Doing it sloppy and stupid. Why should that be a problem? Your probe wires running right next to the coil, for example, because you don't know you're not allowed to do that. You didn't twist the coils to, prevent the, resonant frequency vibrations from magnifying. You didn't do these little things. So he's saying not having knowledge of all these technical details doesn't matter. Of course it matters. You didn't know that, the things that I'm putting on the end of the string that are going to provide a counterbalance to my measuring device, they have to be heavier than the thing that's hitting. Oh, okay. You didn't know that.
100% confident of that.
All right, well, whatever. All right, I'll pause. So he's making preposterous statements. He's saying, why don't I commission the experiment? Well, that's exactly what I've done. I've made a public statement saying I'll pay real money. Name your price. I said in one video up to like $500. I said different things. For this rather simple experiment of 2 springs, shoot the energy, catch the energy. Not that complicated. Why would he say this horseshit? Why say something that's just so overtly wrong? It's just so stupid. Why don't you commission the experiment? I've actively been doing that, you creep.
Somebody else, JPG, Richie, somebody we can trust. I say, look, you spend them.
Okay, so let me go back even further, because that's what
You
he
shouldn't
said.
get different results. There's no earthly reason why you should.
Okay, sorry.
I'm 100% confident of that. Why aren't you willing to commission that experiment, Gary?
All right, so I've actively done that. Again, I've actively commissioned it. I sent, Applied Science, sent him an email, said almost open-ended how much I'll pay him, $2,000, just because that would be great to have it on his channel. Okay, because he's made some assertions about kinetic energy. I posted emails to him, comments in his comment section, trying to get him interested in the subject. Said there's a real controversy here. Couldn't you do the experiment? So I've been actively trying to get somebody competent to do the experiment. And it's just such, what an amazing fucking lie to pretend I've done anything else. Oh, you're such a stupid fuck. Oh, god damn, how can you live with your lying self?
If I could afford it, I'd spend some money and I'd send it to you or somebody else.
So this whole thing, if I could afford it, right? And he's complaining about the radar experiments and other things that cost him money. And my whole point was, I wouldn't spend it. That's right. Other people have the equipment. Why buy redundant equipment? And I think it was probably a lot of money. So frankly, he says he doesn't spend any money. I don't think that's true. So he must have an awful lot of hardware available. Well, frankly, I don't have frequency multipliers and all this crap, So that's just horse shit.
JPG, Richie, somebody we can trust. I say, look, you spend the money on the experiment. If I can afford it, and I can't. So the best I can do is do the work myself with equipment that nobody else knows how to use for some reason, even though it's simple equipment.
So let's understand, it's not simple equipment. Okay, having a good millisecond time counter, it's not simple, but whatever. I guess there's ways to do it now. Like he did demonstrate, to some extent you can use off-the-shelf software, as long as you have some hope that your computer's running correctly, and hope to get proper frame rates. You can certainly, video is high enough quality now where you might be able to deduce velocities based on video. So there's ways of doing it, but I'm just saying it is a lot better to have equipment made for the purpose.
I think because I'm an electrician, and I spent all my life having to do things on the cheap, I know how to get the best out of equipment. I can use this piece of equipment that's only basically a multi-track recorder, digital multi-track recorder, DAW, DAW. I can get the best out of that. I can use it for so many experiments. I use that for so many things. You wouldn't believe the tests I do on it. I don't just use it as a multi-track recorder, as you can see there. I use it as a timer, a very, very efficient, accurate timer, timing to the thousandth of a second.
Yeah, I know, but none of us can be sure of that, frankly. But whatever. I'm not gonna argue your timer didn't work. But jeez, you sure would like it to be tested to some better standard than you say so. I mean, it'd be nice to have something better than you say so.
By the way, Gary, you didn't seem to understand what the numbers meant. There were four-digit numbers. The first digit was the second, and the three digits after that, those were thousandths of a second. So if it said 1999, that would mean 1 millisecond of 2 seconds. You know what I mean? 1 second and 999 milliseconds. Milliseconds are a thousandth of a second. I'm sure you know that, but just in case, because you did seem confused. You were trying to read the numbers and you didn't know how to read the numbers. And then one point.
Whatever this nonsense is, I didn't know how to read the numbers. Where was that in the video where that was an issue? The point is you're saying, okay, the bigger the number, the slower the speed. Okay, that's all we need to know. Nothing else is going to be relevant. I mean, he's just so full of shit. This petty little bullshit. All right, anyway. All right, so this fucktard is saying that we needed to know the 100th of a second reading to find out whether something's losing 1/3 of its momentum. Now, I don't think so. Okay, I don't think you even need the 100th of a second to realize 1/3 of the momentum is gone, the velocity. So we're talking about a whole 1/3 change in the velocity, and he says we need to know the 100th of a second to be able to do that. No, we don't. Not even close to reality. Anyway, it's just so petty. Alright, back. So I'll play a little of this. He's talking about my old videos were somehow more DraftScience and I was nicer and all this bullshit and blah blah. Irrelevant. The arguments are the arguments, and I clearly made my first video basically saying Einstein's wrong. No doubt about that. That bent space is silly. So there were pretty overt, in-your-face accusations being made. And now he's going to lie about the Feynman videos. I mean, I've played so many Feynman videos, and there's just no denying what Feynman's saying. He's overtly saying there is a random God. He's saying anyone who has an expectation that the universe is in a certain condition and that you've copied the exact condition that it will behave exactly the same. He's saying those observations or those opinions are wrong because there's a random God that forces things to move in some erratic way. I mean, these are overt statements that need criticism because, frankly, they aren't consistent with the truth.
Of misinterpreting what they said. Oh, enough said about Rebel. Well, I just want to show people the evidence. You're talking shit again, I'm afraid.
All right, so he says I misinterpret something, but he doesn't explain what was misinterpreted. So in all the critiques of all the crap Feynman did, drawing it wrong, I mean, completely wrong. I mean, obviously, I mean, these are really simple arguments, but I mean, there's a little tiny slit, and Feynman's drawing the patterns as if they would land in these completely different locations when they would land right on top of each other, because there's only a millimeter of difference here. They can only be in a millimeter of difference in space on the target. The light coming from one slit can't be over here, and the light coming from the other slit isn't over here. That's not the way it works. They're right on top of each other. I mean, that's a simple mistake, and you're saying, oh, no one should point that out, that the reasoning and logic is superficial and sloppy. It isn't very good logic when you're using a very false diagram of the actual pattern. I mean, that doesn't matter. I mean, you're just so silly, and you're again, all because you have this petty little, your little feelings got hurt one day, and now you've turned into a fucking lunatic, a car keying loony. You're just looking to destroy. You're having a little tantrum. I mean, grow the fuck up and make a real argument. Ugh, pathetic.
I hate on you all the time. That's why I was able to send you a thank you message the other day. Look, thank you for at least getting some ground. And okay, you took.
Yeah, the ground I gave is that, okay, if we're going to not analyze experiments, on the surface you've successfully done what Ken Wheeler has done. You've shown me something. Look, it's crookedy light. How did it get crooked? Must be the magnet that bent it. It wasn't crooked until I put the magnet in. Now the light's crooked. The light bent the magnet bent the light. Yeah, on the surface, okay. And did I know the answer to the ferrocell on day one? No. Did it take some time to figure out what the hell's going on? Yeah. But you don't want to deal with that analysis. You think the experiment says right on the surface. And we don't need to do any analysis. And I'm trying to say, well, obviously you need to do some analysis because it creates a paradox. And if you don't understand that a paradox is a critical error, then, what the fuck?
Get away again straight away. It's not my fault that you're fucking crap. But I was, admit, you can't deny it. I at least wrote that message and it's still there.
Oh, whatever message. I didn't get any message, so you didn't send it by email. I don't read all your fucking comments, shit for brain. You think I really am going to waste my time reading all this fucking goddamn crap? I mean, you cover everything in your attitude shit, and I'm really not interested. I've already got your impression, okay? You don't like my physics, you don't like my attitude, you don't like me. Fine, I really don't give a fuck, weasel. I despise you, okay? But I don't have to make video after video saying, I despise you, I despise you, I despise. I don't have to repeat shit over and over again and play these fucking games you're playing. I would like to get to the arguments. You won't answer the thought experiment questions. Do you really think 2,000 joules is going out one end of the gun and the rest of the gun is only 4 joules of energy? And that makes sense, consistent with Newton's third law? Just explain the gun, for example. Just explain how Newton's third law could possibly mean anything if kinetic energy is real and momentum is garbage. Then how the fuck do you explain it? Because clearly it doesn't send the same energy this way as it sends that way. Fuckhead. Yeah, alright, pause. Oh, this part's just too funny, so gotta play it.
All these people, when it suits you to stand up to speak on your behalf, misinterpreting what they said. But anyway, enough said about Apple. Oh, I just want to show people the evidence. He's talking shit again, I'm afraid. Look, I don't hate on you all the time. That's why I was able to send you a thank you message the other day. Look, say thank you for, at least getting some ground.
Sorry.
Okay, took it away again straight away. Still there, I've not said anything nasty on top of it. It's still there saying thank you for, and some detail about how to move things forward. But you say, no, you'd rather speak. You just show yourself up to be a bitter and twisted, selfish, arrogant, weasel, little, tiny, sad failure of a man. You're just not stepping up to the plate. You're a coward. We don't want you in our fucking army. We don't want you on our side.
So he's calling me the coward when he's too much of a coward to actually play my real argument in any kind of contextually honest form. Okay, this piece of scum. At least I'm giving him the opportunity to say his crap, right? He's not. I'm searching for the physics, though. There's no physics in his fucking arguments. Clearly, I want to talk about physics, and he wants to just do this character assassination, waste of time horse shit. But it's just so ironic to him call me the coward when he's the one running from all of my arguments and all the point I've made. So where have you explained the paradox doesn't exist? That it's possible to create differential momentum from the same spring compression. And that makes sense to you. Why does it make sense?
We don't want you, Gary. Go away. You're useless to us. You are not fighting for truth. You're not fighting for fact. You're fighting against truth.
So again, he keeps arguing. So even though he has been, it has been, I think, I mean, again, he doesn't acknowledge anything, that some of his experiments have been flawed. And that's just a fact. It was a flaw not to have heavier weights. It was a flaw to use gravity mechanisms to create velocities. Those were flaws. And he won't concede any of it. I mean, the not understanding angular momentum. That when you're pushing objects that are going to roll, if they're light enough, the faster object won't bother rolling because there won't be enough friction to cause the rolling. So it won't convert any of its momentum into angular momentum of rotation. And again, rotation doesn't matter if it's a wheel on a cart, because the wheel then always has its contact point is always with the ground, so it's always the vector of its motion is always in the right direction. But if you're allowing rolling things to hit a surface, a flat surface, well, then the roll goes into pushing things down. It doesn't go into pushing them forward. These are real physics arguments, and you are the one who is the coward and has just run from every one of these critiques.
In fact, you're just a sad little man. wasting everybody's time because you were sad.
That's my whole point. You have just been exactly that. That's why I would dump it all in acid, because the whole thing is just crap. This is just noise. You're not advancing the conversation in any way whatsoever because you don't care about the details. You don't understand any of the theory to start with. You overtly state the mathematics is incomprehensible to you, all of it apparently. I'm at least conceding that some of it has a relevancy, but I've pointed out why it's through their contrivance that they've perverted Newton into the F equals ma and then F equals 1/2 mv squared bullshit. And that the simple answer is that the force is the momentum. And that's clearly what Newton was saying. Now, why don't you explain how Newton was wrong, or explain that that isn't what Newton was saying? Explain how Newton didn't understand energy to be momentum. Or explain how if he did, he was wrong.
I'm sorry, Gary, your sadness isn't our problem. I would like to alleviate your sadness somehow if I could. Which is why I sent you those slits up a few years ago, thinking, oh, this guy seemed interested and he can't afford.
So let's understand. It's one piece of paper with 6 little transparencies glued to it. It's not like I got a package of something as there's a huge burden. Bullshit.
If I said, so I bought them for you. I didn't know you were fucking rich. Relatively rich.
So I don't even understand, again, this lie. Where do you get this lie from? There's no demonstration that I'm any sense rich. So this is all premised on some silly lie. So you can keep, whatever. I can't stop you from being a stupid lying piece of scum. But these are all lies. You have zero evidence that I have any wealth. So this is just such a pile of shit. And I live in this meager environment. That's all I've ever had is a meager environment. Everybody's been seeing my meager environment since I've been on the internet. I mean, this is just an insane accusation. Oh, too stupid.
$4,000 to spend at the drop of a hat. You're rich, by my standards.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't spend $4,000 at the drop of a hat. Clearly, if I am correct, if I can get this battle, my argument to you is I never even have to spend the money because I'm going to get more from it than I'd ever pay out for it in the first place. It's going to be to my advantage. It's an investment, essentially. But whatever.
Standards. When you can bet $10,000 and you can raise $10,000 just like that, you're rich by my standards.
Whatever. So you don't have as many friends as I have. So I'm quite certain, just from family alone, if I ever needed it, I could get it. It's a very comforting thought, frankly. But the fact is, I've never asked for it. Okay, I'm in debt to no one. But yeah, I can. I guess that's the point. I mean, if you don't get yourself into debt, then you have an opportunity to acquire debt. My credit card's always offering me a big pile of money for borrowing, but I've never borrowed any money on it.
But you're very, very poor by the standards that really matter. I'm rich right now, Gary.
Oh, whatever. I own the future, asshole. You're going to be buried as what you should be buried as, a toilet accessory. Okay, you're a little weaselly lying scumbag. Pathetic. I mean, it's just so pathetic that you have to constantly resort to these stupid lies. I mean, I could make up crap about your life and just say it. Lie about who you are and what you've done. But I'm the one who has the integrity. I don't have any interest in doing that. You fucking piece of shit.
Rich. My heart is full and swelling.
Oh, whatever. Your brain is full of your ass. That's what it is. Well, anyway, okay. Ugh. Anyway, I'll be back. So he's saying now, just said he's really proud of himself and he's proud of the people that stood by him. So let's understand, Farley just used my dead sister's name as a screen name. And this is his biggest fan and his biggest supporter and, his biggest friend. A guy who pulls this kind of shit. That's the character of your supporters. Okay, malicious trolls. And you're proud of that. You're proud of your association with these fine people. Fuck you. Get what you deserve.
By the nice people who spoke up, because I know that Ian M. person, he's been punished by you for speaking up on my behalf. Not he wasn't being overly supportive of me. He was just being honest, saying, no, I can't remember exactly his message, but you blocked him. You throw him under the bus like you threw Michael Fallon under the bus. You throw anybody under the bus who isn't.
Of course, I throw assholes off the bus. That's exactly right. They don't want to go where the bus is going. Then get off the fucking bus, you retard. What are you here for? Yeah, if you as a viewer can't tell the difference between these two people, me and him, the compulsive liar and the person who wants to talk about physics, you can't tell the difference. Fuck you. All right, unsubscribe immediately, please. I really don't want your cooties anywhere near my channel. You're an idiot, a retard, a fucking nut. And they're out there, frankly. You know, who's watching these videos but a bunch of flat earther types, conspiracy types, other shitheads. And that's the whole problem with the conversation. If we could at all get the conversation into a better arena, then we could have much better physics conversation, because obviously nobody would accept this kind of crap you're producing as anything of value.
Willing to support your evil strategy. You're like Hitler. That's who you're like. There in your little bunker.
Whatever.
Alright, anyway, so comments.
Anyway, well, that was unpleasant. I shouldn't have expected otherwise. So there's no evidence in that video. So I don't know. The comment was so off the subject. You're saying, why the fuck did this Cyrus guy put this comment on this shit video? Who the fuck knows, right? Because it really wasn't in this video anywhere. So just demonstrating again that the audience just can't fucking function. You know, they're, you know, they're not on a useful level. You know. But anyway, so I guess I won't bother with the proof video, right? His experiment. So apparently he put the spring on the wall. Well, fine. Does he actually show the releasing mechanism or anything? Maybe, hopefully. And again, yes, that was one suggestion. I still think the moving spring has something to do with things, because again, I go back to the Professor Lewin video, for which no one has commented, that creates free momentum also. It seems a pretty bizarre curiosity. How can you have Newton's third law if that shit's happening? You know, in terms of the action and reaction would work, just because, you know, in momentum terms, you are shoving, you know, the 30 joules that way and the extra 30 this way. But it still doesn't make any sense, because it still has its implications. Well, why don't I just use this advantage to lift more water at a reservoir? I could lift more water, you know, to a higher location with less energy if I just use this momentum magnifying mechanism. I mean, if people understand that momentum lifts water, I guess you have to first get them to agree that momentum lifts water. If they don't agree that that's what momentum can do, you know, then we're not, you know, then I guess they can't even have enough understanding to understand the paradox. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter, I suppose. All this is going to get sorted out, so eventually all this will be, you know, we'll be able to look at hindsight and say, oh shit, that was the simple argument to make, and then the whole thing would have been over and wouldn't have to go through all this crap. But clearly, momentum and kinetic energy cannot coexist. They are not describing different things, they're describing the same thing. One of them has to be right and one of them has to be wrong. And it's the only viable answer to the problem. And I would argue, since Newton's mechanics works so well, I see no reason to think, and because we don't have any experiments showing the extra energy being collected, that is, we have no experiments demonstrating that things with inverse mass to velocity ratios actually have different energies. Okay, that you can actually make the 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour light more light bulbs than the 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour. Zero evidence. Zero evidence that they won't do anything other than light exactly the same number of LEDs. And again, that will not be replied to with any kind of counter argument. why there is such an experiment in existence. They will not show it to me. They will not. That was what I would argue is worth the $50. Show me that one. Okay. And argument's over then. We don't have to argue it anymore because you'll have evidence. But until you have evidence, you're just talking theoretical shit and claiming you have proven something in spite of the fact that it creates paradoxes. Which is just, you know, that's the definition of being really stupid, in my opinion. Alright, so anyway, this has been a DraftPhysics.com video presentation. Till the next time and such.